So I got good news and I got bad news. Anybody that knows me knows I start every sentence with this. You're going to hear me say it a lot, and sometimes it's the same news. So don't worry about that. That's going to be the case. So if at any time you can't hear me, you just got to raise your hand. I don't think that's normally a problem for me. So if that's obviously a problem today, you just got to raise your hand. The second thing is I've developed a skill over my lifetime that I can talk for a very long time without breathing. So if I start talking very fast and it starts to go too fast, you just also have to raise your hand. I've already said that Jennifer is going to be sorely disappointed because I'm not really your normal public speaker. I'm a little bit more, I was pretty excited when I saw that the microphone detached from the stand because this normally is not me. So we're going to try to wing it. I'm also going to try to use a little technology here because we're going to see how this works. And this is not normally my strength. Normally I have someone who's more technologically adept than me to try to help with this. So we'll see how this works. So as you just heard, my name is Stuart Sandlin. I'm really excited to be here today. I have to be honest and tell you that I'm both humbled and shocked by how kind and generous those of you that I've met have already been. It really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate the fact that you've given me such a warm welcome to Charlotte. I went to school only an hour south of here. The only time I had really come to Charlotte was when I was coming to do something that I probably wasn't supposed to do at the time, or when I was coming to apply for a job, which probably I also shouldn't have done at the time. So, but I've done it. I really enjoy Charlotte. I think Charlotte, I have many friends that are from Charlotte from my time at Wofford, and so that was really good. And so I'm excited now to be here with you today. So I work with Hapag-Lloyd. Hapag-Lloyd, a lot of you I think you might have already read, you might have a little bit of a clue about what we are, but we're a container carrier. So we're actually, we move containers. You've seen them on the railway, you've seen them on the road. They look like 18-wheelers, but they have corrugated. It's the corrugated looking 18-wheelers because, of course, we all know that corrugation makes it stronger. So that's why the containers look like that. But you know, I think that what they say is that a picture can really do 1,000 words. So we're going to actually see if we can make this work. Please. Okay, so that kind of gives you a little bit of feel. I tried to think about how I could do that without the video, and I didn't think I could really do it justice. And I was really hoping that the speaker worked, because if the speaker didn't work, trying to give a voiceover as that video is playing also doesn't have the same dramatic effect. Now you know what I did on the 6-hour drive up to figure out how I was going to do that. But let's start first by saying kind of what is a shipping line, because I think that's really important. Because when we think about a shipping line, you think about, okay, well that's actually going to move containers, we're going to move ships, we're going to move goods. And this is a little bit interesting because when you think about that, that's from Shanghai to LA, right? Or it's from Buenos Aires to Savannah, or it's any of those points. But it's not quite as simple as that. Because when you operate a shipping line, you have to think we offer weekly services now. So this means that it goes in a loop. So you call a bunch of West Coast ports. So say you start in the north part of China, then you go south, and then you come to the US, and then you call all of the eastern seaport, the western coast seaport, and then you go back. So it's what you call a loop, and it's just always going at the same time. So your ship is always moving. A lot of times people that don't think about that, they don't know about that. So that means that there's a crazy high cost to entry, because guess what? That ship can't do that loop in a week. That ship has to do that loop over about 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, depending on where it's going, which means you need numerous ships. So with each ship costing about $250 million, you've got 8 ships per loop. All of a sudden, it starts to get pretty expensive to open up a new service and a new loop. You know, a lot of people didn't talk about supply chain management until 2 years ago, when the pandemic hit, and now everybody talks about supply chain management. It used to be nobody wanted to talk to me at the party, and now everybody wants to talk to me at the party, which was really cool until the family came in for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, and then all of a sudden we didn't have the goods, and it was all supply chain management's fault. But you know, I like to think that container shipping, while we're only a small part of the supply chain, I would just say that we want to be a little bit like a back. Like your back. You don't ever think about your back until your back hurts. And when your back hurts, all you can think about is your back. It's the same thing for supply chain. You didn't really think about the supply chain until the supply chain starts to break. And then that's what happened. So it's interesting when you think about what is a shipping line. We normally have weekly calls. This is different. This has evolved over time. When the first container came to be in 1956, it was only much smaller. That was when they first went into the world of modular containers, and it didn't happen like that. Today, for example, we're moving 12 million containers a year. It's a lot. So let's just say, so first we got to get into a basic glossary of terms. But let's just talk about some basic terms, because I think it's really important that we talk about what are the basic terms that we really kind of need to handle. So first off, let's talk about it. First thing, I just told you what we move. What do we move? We move containers. Containers. They're corrugated boxes. They sit on top of wheels, which are called chassis. But if you think about it, a container is like a Lego. I just had somebody new start with us the other day. I had a couple new team members, and I always like to introduce myself to the team members. And somebody said, how would you describe your business to somebody who doesn't know your business? I said, well, have you ever been to a dry cleaner? They said, of course I've been to a dry cleaner. I said, that's exactly what we do. And of course, they gave me the same look you just gave me. You go, the customer goes, and they take it and they drop it off, and then we give them a receipt. And then we move it to the other part of the world, and then they come and they give us the receipt back, and then we give them back the container. It's exactly like it works with your dry cleaning. You just go, and if you go up the show to pick up your clothes and you don't have the ticket, maybe they ask for your name, hopefully they spelled it right. So then you can get your clothes back. So the container is the thing. There's 2 main types of containers. You saw in the video that they're the white containers. So I asked, I think Juan or Mia or Katie asked me the question earlier about the refrigerated containers. We move reefer containers. We're the second largest reefer container mover in the world. It's the white containers. If you see a white Hapag-Lloyd container, that's not going to have corrugated sides. That's because it's insulated. And then there's a little power pack on the back called a genset. It's a generator, and that kind of sits, and that's what powers the box as it goes before they can plug it in on the ship. So let's talk about the second thing. We need to have container ships. If we don't have container ships, we don't have a business. Same with customers, for the record. If we don't have customers, we also don't have a business. But I would say with container ships, it's very important. A ship is just a large vessel designed to transport containers. The first time I ever stepped foot on a container ship, I walked aboard, and of course, in a typical Southern fashion, I tried to tell the captain I really liked his boat. He said, son, this is not a boat. A boat is on a lake. This is not on a lake. This is a vessel. This is a ship. So anyway, I learned then. I've never made the mistake again. I now know that this is a vessel, not a boat. I didn't know that. So if you have a container ship, you also have a place to take it off. That's a port. The ports in the U.S., here's just a little bit of Stuart thought. The good news is, I don't have a great filter between here and here. The bad news is, I don't have a great filter between here and here. I told you there's going to be good and bad news all day. Ports, though, are our greatest area where we as a country have to continue to invest. If we cannot get our ports operating efficiently and effectively, we were going to lose in the long term in a globalized economy. This is our biggest weakness today. If you look at the production out of the U.S. ports, it is almost half of what the most productive ports in the world do. We have to fix that. There's no reason that we should be at half of the production.
And that's one of the challenges that causes a big bottleneck because we're one of the biggest consumption societies. So, I don't know why they put this on, but this is kind of cool. We in the liner shipping industry, like most companies, speak a lot in acronyms. In this world, it's an RTG. That's a rubber-tired gantry crane for all you people that are super interested in what an RTG is. This is how you move the containers once it comes along the port. I personally am on a personal mission to try to end PCA. People creating acronyms. People put it in parentheses and then they say it's an acronym, and that's the way it goes. Often you'll hear people that talk about stevedores. I'm sorry, I'm probably standing right in your all's way, sorry for that. So there's stevedores. That's the people who are on the docks that are working the ships. These are the folks that are actually doing the labor, that are up in the crane, lifting the containers. These are the people that work it. Before containerized shipping, the stevedores were the ones when, before there were containers, they would put your cargo in a net, they would pick it up, they would put it on the ship, they would stow it on the ship, and then they would move it that way. Now with this, the stevedores still work the port and still work the containers. So I think that's important. And then the last thing that we have on here is bunker fuel. Bunker fuel is especially relevant now because in a world of desired increase in sustainability, bunker fuel is what we have to do. Do you know that while I like to say that I'm a liner shipping company, most people would call it steamships. Do you want to know why it was called steamships? Because of all the steam that came out of the ship. But guess what? That is not emissions-free steam. So the bottom line is that we use bunker fuel to power our ships. Bunker fuel is the remnants of oil refining. It is the junk of the junk of the junk. It is nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. It doesn't burn clean, it burns dirty, but it's super cheap. Because the initial goal of containerized shipping was to make it super effective and super cost effective to move goods from point A to point B. So you had to be able to do that on a cheaply powered ship. In its ambient state, it's hard. You can walk on it. It's so nasty, you gotta heat it up to burn it to make it work. Even now with scrubbers, so we put scrubbers on the ship. The scrubber's a $3 million bulk add-on that you put on the ship. And it has a thing that has to catch all the emissions, and then it oxidizes the emissions into little pellets, but then they have to capture that, and then when they get a port, they have to figure out how they dispose of the pellets. So I'm going to talk more about sustainability in a couple of minutes, but it's important that we know about what bunker fuel is. So let's just put it into perspective. 3 years ago, bunker fuel was $200 a ton. That's a metric ton, so that's 1,000 kilograms. 2,200 pounds. For 2,200 pounds of bunker fuel, it's $200. Cheap and dirty. As they say, you can get 2 of the 3, right? You can get fast, you can get cheap, you can get good. You can only get 2. So this is the key. It's cheap and it's not good. So a couple things I want to talk about. So what happened with the pandemic? What do we know was going to happen with the pandemic? Nobody knew what was going to happen with the pandemic. Were we in a globalized world when the pandemic happened before? No. But what we got to see is we got to see a supply chain that really was a supply chain. I mean, we got to see it link by link start to break. Link by link. I mean, it started on one link and then it kept progressing down the chain. As one link got fixed, the next link broke. And it was really interesting because never in the history of our business have we seen the supply chain get so rigid and break. The supply chain did indeed break. I like to say the supply chain normally has a little bit of flex. You have a little flex in your tongue. I'm not used to a microphone, normally I don't need one. So, but the supply chain for the first time ever was super taut. It was so tight that there was no flex left. So a little more pressure on that super tight, it was too fragile and it just snapped. And that's what we saw happen. So let's talk about what happened. Who imagined, and just by a show of hands, in 2018, or let's even go for those early non-adopters, who thought in 2019 you would be communicating with people via Teams, or Zoom, or Blue Jeans, or through masks? Nobody. So this is the exact point. The pandemic came and life changed. And so now everybody's sitting in the house. Everybody's trying to figure out what they're going to do. Everybody's working from home. Everybody's super excited about working from home because they get to work from home. And they're sitting on the couch going,
this old couch, I think I need a new couch. The fact is that nobody's spending money on goods and services. They're not going to restaurants. They're not going on vacation. You got all the disposable income. The bank account is going up. You got government subsidies for those people that were getting government subsidies. You got a lot of stuff happening. And you got to spend the money. So everybody ordered the stuff. And the first thing that people ordered was new furniture. New furniture ordered like crazy. Well, guess what? In the world of container shipping, new furniture is like mine. That's like my panacea. That stuff is super big. It's super light. I mean, it's everything I want in a container. I mean, it's really good stuff for me. So I was really excited about this. And this is where the break started. So it started, in my view, when the ports started to shut down, pandemic started to come out in Asia, all the carriers said, oh my gosh, we have to pull our assets aside because otherwise we're going to be running with ships that are moving at 50% full. That would be super awesome because the fixed cost of the ship, you have the variable cost. If you're only running at 50%, you're losing no matter what your revenue is. So we all pulled capacity. And then the China ports say, no problem, we're ready to keep rocking, keep going. And then the orders came in for the demand. And all these couches and all these furnitures and all these TVs and all these chairs and all the house remodels and everything that you get when you're looking at the same four walls thinking, this is old, I need something different, now started to change. And so this is what caused the spike in demand. It was the spike in demand that first did this to us. Because the spike in demand, everybody now redeploys all their ships. And it's not like the airplanes. It's not like you park it in the desert. Oh, we're going to fly tomorrow. Okay, you know what? I can fly today too if you still want. A ship takes a long time to get it moving again. So then you put the ship back up and running and you get it moving. The ship starts to go around and starts to pick up everything. In Asia, we overload all the ships. I mean, ships are full. Everything comes to the U.S. I just told you a little while ago that the U.S. can't unload the ship as quickly. So if you can't unload the ship as quickly, that's really a sad thing. So if you can't unload the ship, then you start to backlog there. And if that starts to happen, now you can't get your couch. There's a reason why the couch was 6 weeks, and now it's another 6 weeks, and now it's another 6 weeks, because it's sitting on the port outside. And what are you going to do with that? You're just going to sit there and have to deal with that. So the downside is that that's where the chain first broke. So the container ships came in, the demand spiked. Guess what? Now all the containers are sitting on the ships outside of the ports. Well, guess how many containers are back in Asia? There's not containers going back because they're all sitting on the ship waiting. So now you don't even have any containers to load to put it on the ship to come back into the U.S. This is where you started to see the breakdown of the supply chain to get here. And this was really a challenge for us. It's a really challenge for everybody. So that's really kind of what we saw happen as it started to move on. Finally then, you started to get the ships working. I don't know if you know, and if you don't, you should Google it. There was a picture one time that there were 120 ships outside of the port of LA. 120 ships. These are not small ships. Does anybody know how big a ship is? The big ships today? Let me put it into perspective for you. 1,300 feet. This is taller than the Empire State Building. If you take the Empire State Building, you land on the side, the ship is taller than the Empire State Building. It's a big ship. It is not a boat. So if you think about kind of what that looks like, I mean, it's a big old ship that you're loading. They're holding 22,000 containers. If you think about how wide it is, it's 200 feet wide. So it's if you put it into perspective, it's two basketball courts long, back to back, 200 feet. I mean, it's a big old ship. So the point is that now that starts to happen, and now you can finally get your containers coming in. But again, you see it happening. But now all the containers are on the port. Well, any of you all have used a slide puzzle where you have one open spot, you got to move all the things around? That's what the ports were trying to do, but they're trying to do it with 200,000 containers, and there's only one container spot open. So now the ports are not being super effective. And so this is why the port started to say, I'm not going to work the next ship because I don't have any place to put the containers. And now, because there's no place to move it, now it moves into the rail. The rail can't move the containers because you can't dig the right containers out to go onto the rail. So now the rail part of the supply chain is busted. And guess what? Then the rail says, I can't do any more trains because the rail isn't designed to accept that many containers at the destination either. So now you have a further challenge in the fact that it continues to move down the supply chain. The bottom line is I think that you all get the point of what I'm trying to say. We have a big challenge in our supply chain when it got so tight. So where are we at today? Well, actually, before I do that, I can show you some actual
This chart was one of mine. I like colors, I like pictures. This is the chart of the corporate slide deck. So this slide deck, or this one actually shows in the top top left-hand side for you, it shows that you already see in Q3, the volumes already started to drop. The demand already started to drop. You already see that in Q3. One of the challenges that I don't think anybody talks about today, though, is that nobody's ordering anything today. So today we have an artificial drop in our demand, and the reason why is because all the warehouses are full. Because there was a problem that nobody ever saw before that says they have order replenishment systems that are continuing to order stuff, continuing to bring stuff in, but you can't really bring stuff in because the ships are all off the port. So they ordered all this stuff. They got 80 containers sitting on the ships outside of the port, but it's not in inventory, so we don't have it yet. So keep ordering because we need more inventory. So they effectively overbought, and this is what happened and why all of a sudden now everybody's way overstocked. If you look at the sales to inventory today, inventories are higher than they've ever been. And only now do we see this starting to come around. This is why all of a sudden people get your stuff. This is also why you have a little congestion still today, because the warehouses can't take the containers. So what you see here is you see the container volumes are coming down. Somebody asked me a question earlier about what are happening to the prices. You can see here, this is where the prices are coming already back down, back towards the 2020 levels. You can already see that curve is coming. And I think this follows the basic law of economics. When you have a fixed amount of supply and demand starts to drop, guess what? Prices are going to fall. So that's exactly what we see. I have another nice corporate chart here, just in case you wanted the numbers. Effectively, what this shows is the next 2 years are going to be in the same scenario. When you order a ship, it takes a long time. It's not like you go to the yard and you go and say, "Ooh, I like this one. Do you have it in black?" That's not really how it works. When you order a ship, it takes several years to get your containers. To get your ships. It takes 3 years or so to get your ship built. 3 years, 250 million. And then you also have to get the containers to go along with it. So like we talked about earlier, right? If your container holds 20,000 containers, you need to order 20,000 containers, right? Because your ship order holds 20,000. Not really, because your ship carries 20,000 over, it takes 20,000 off. You got to have something to go back, otherwise your ship sails empty. So that means there's a multiplier on how many times you need. You normally need about 2.5 times your capacity and inventory for your containers, because you have to own those as well. So that's what you see here, is you see effectively that supply is continuing to rise very dramatically and demand is not rising. So what does this mean? This means that we're going to have a little bit of a gap in kind of how does that work. So that's as much as I can do on kind of the industry update. Now I just want to talk for just a brief second about kind of our focus areas. What am I kind of focused on? I thought she was going to have animated it to do like one square at a time. Oh gosh. So what am I focused on? So when I think about what am I really hyper-focused on for this year, number one, I've met several of you in this room that are actually focused on supply chain management. I'm super excited to hear that. I did not focus on supply chain management, I just ended up in it. And I'm really glad that people are focused on this, because there is a shortage of people in the supply chain world, on the liner shipping side in particular, in the US. If you're from another part of the world, you're probably more familiar. If you're in Europe, you see the ships all the time. If you're in South America, you see more ships. In the US, it's only in the coastal cities you're not aware of what liner shipping is. Nobody wants to do it. When they think about shipping, they think about FedEx, UPS, they think about, I want to do small package, I want to do something like that. Nobody thinks about what container shipping is. And I think that this is something very different, something that we work on. We need to have a better education of how do we make people more aware of what our business is. And I think that this is a relevant component. So I'm really focused heavily right now on people leadership. For me personally, this means that I've invested a ton of time in what does that mean for our people leaders. We, like many companies, promote people that are really good at their jobs. You're really good doing the sales steering job. I mean, you're like the best sales steering person I've come across in a decade. Congratulations, you're now a manager. But we never give any skill training on how to actually manage and lead people. We never talk about how do we actually engage and inspire our teams. how do we actually lead from the front? What does that actually even mean? And so I think that this, for me, is a big gap. And I believe that we, as a society, have to figure out how do we get better at this. Because when I talk to our customers, they also have gaps in this. And I think we just have to figure out how do we pass along skill sets other than I learned by emulating what the guy before me did or girl before me did. Because that's not always the right way. And that may not necessarily match your style. I had one guy who used to work for me, and he was in the finance side. He goes, yeah, but Stuart, if I come and give him high fives like you every day, we're going to have problems. They're going to think I'm on drugs. I said, yes, Paul, you should definitely not act like me. So I'm really hyper-focused on people leadership. I think it is going to be a war for people in the future. I think even when automation continues to come, I do think that people make a difference. Even as we continue to automate, even if you look, I mean, I guess I'm about to say something I shouldn't say in Charlotte. I fight Delta a lot. But when doing so, it's highly automated. I don't ever talk to anybody when I make the booking, but when I get on the plane, the people really do make the difference. And it is a big difference. You can definitely tell on what that feels like. I fly a lot internationally, and I definitely pick the flight that I'm going to be on based on the service that place provides, what the people provide, not how easy it is to make a booking there. So we're hyper-focused on people leadership. I'll give you just a little bit more. So I believe, number one, there's a book. It's called The First 100 Days. It's the New Leader's First 100 Days. It's an old book. I think I read it for the first time in 2003 or something. And it talks about having a burning imperative. I would say for me, this is the cornerstone on which I try to lead everything going forward. It's the one thing that trumps everything else. It's the unifying tie that binds the team together. So I've been super explicit that I want to be number one for quality. I want to have the highest service level delivery I could possibly have. And in doing so, I have 5 pillars of culture that I promote, and I talk about it, I name. Because without those 5 pillars of culture, I can't actually execute. Because this is super important for me. So my 5 pillars of culture, it used to only be 4, and then my team came and said, Stuart, we think we need a 5th. I said, okay, well, if y'all think we need a 5th, then who am I to say no? Let's do 5 pillars. So the first is you gotta have trust. Because if you don't build trust in your organization, you're gonna have a little bit of a gap. You've gotta have trust. You have to trust that the person says that they're gonna, when they say they're gonna do it, you have to trust that they're gonna do it. Because if you've gotta follow up, that's just wasted time. You gotta trust that they have their back, that they have your back. You have to trust that they put the organization's goals in front of their own self-interest. There's no ulterior motives. Because if you get to that trust, then you can have the second pillar, which is open communication. This means if you see something that's going wrong, you got to say it's going wrong. You got to just say it. And if you see somebody that can do something better, you have to say that they can do something better. And if you see, if you're talking about something, you have to just be able to share very openly on what that is. And that's super easy because guess what? Every one of us in this room likes to share how he thinks things are. Everybody wants to share. Everybody. If I was to say, tell me one thing I can do better right now, I guarantee you every one of you got something you can say. But the downside is that means you also have to be willing to take it on when somebody tells you that you can do something better. Not all of us are as good at taking on the feedback as we are giving the feedback. So you've got to have the open communication. The third one for me is we have to believe in coaching development. We have to invest an inordinate amount of time on coaching development. There's a saying that says that a rising tide lifts all ships, and I think that this is true to the core. I tell my direct leadership team 2.5 days a week. 2.5 days a week, I want them coaching their teams. This means not talking about what is the business doing. This means I want you coaching your teams, coaching them how to get better. This is skills-based coaching, not your numbers are down by 10%. Let me coach you how to get up to your correct goal. That's not coaching. It's a non-biased, team member goal-centric coaching. This is super important for me. So coaching development is kind of that thing. You'll see career development here at the bottom, but I'll talk about that in a second. The fourth one that I've always had is a commitment to excellence. My mom taught me all my life, if you're going to do something, do it well or don't do it at all. And I would just say the same thing. Just do it. Just commit to it. Just commit to doing it the best you can do. I think I told a couple of students in the room earlier, I have a girl that's in high school today. And if she comes home and she says I got an 80, after I try to realize I need a better poker face, I'll say, okay, that's fine. Do you think you did everything you could do? And that's the best possible grade you could have possibly gotten. And if she can look at me and say yes, then I'll go, well, give me a high five on the 80. But I think it's super important. We have to just commit to excellence. And then my team came and said, yeah, this is when we did the other one. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to be? They said, we need to have agents of change. And I said, okay. So now I said, so tell me what it means. This just simply means that if you see something that needs to be better, don't wait for somebody else to change it. You change it. Change starts with each one of us. And I would say if we live this in our daily life, then we're better off. So just change what you can change. So, just so I can say it again, we need trust, we need open communication, we need coaching and development, we need a commitment to excellence, and we need to be an agent of change. These are the pillars that uphold my number one for quality burning imperative. So that's how I really do it. I think it's super important. It's what I invest in. Our company is a pretty big company, I guess. We're 1,300 people or so in the US. So it's a decent sized company, but we have this at every level of our team now. And I'm really excited for that. So, number one for quality, this is my next focus area because I think that quality is the differentiator in today's world as people go more and more automated, as you get all these AI bots. We want to be number one for quality. We want people to feel when they call us, they get a different level of service. As I ask everybody, if I ask you today, what's the best company that always makes you feel special? Disney does a great job. Disney, absolutely. I always walk away with an empty pocket, and I always walk away with my dollars working. Disney is a great example. Let me tell you another one. It would be my pleasure to tell you another one. If I was to say my pleasure, which company is that?
Chick-fil-A.
Every single person knows that that's the experience at Chick-fil-A, right? And I guess what I say is I want to be the Chick-fil-A or the Disney of shipping. I want somebody in Disney to eventually go, how are those Hapag-Lloyd folks doing? I don't know that's going to be reality, but everybody has to have aspirations. So, in career development, I think that goes without saying. The key for me is I want careers, not jobs. I'm super adamant. We want to create careers, not jobs. We want to be customer focused, not job centric. We want careers, not jobs. I always tell everybody that starts, I want this to be the last place you ever work. Because if we can do that, it's highly unlikely, but if we can do that, if we can create all these things, the number of people that come up and say, because you create such an environment, I know I can't get that somewhere else. Or the people that leave that go, it's not like this everywhere. So I believe in each of the power of three. I want engaged, empowered, and entrepreneurial. If I can create each of the power of three, that's what I really push for. If we're looking at, I do not have a watch though. 1:14. Am I already long? Yeah, okay. See, that's so easy. This is what I like about slide decks. I can just hit the next slide and I'm done. So, who has questions? Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Steve.
Board member Steve.
Steve. By the way, have we introduced Steve as the board member?
Thanks. First, before you leave, there's somebody in the back that's still waiting on their sofa. So.
It's true, but it's getting better.
I'd ask for some questions, and I'd ask the students to think about preparing a question, and I'll admit I'll favor the students. But the gentleman all the way in the back.
Yes, sir. So you made mention that U.S. ports are only about half as efficient as ports around the world. First part of the question is, why is that? And secondly, is the expansion of the Panama Canal and the diversification across both ports going to help us solve that problem? Can you give us some insight into why that is?
I like that you set out the traps before you ask the question. This is a highly politicized answer. This is also when I really struggle because the answer to the question is that we don't have as much automation as we should have inside of the ports. That the fear is that automation will remove jobs, and that removing jobs is not very good. And so as such, we feel that we can protect jobs and have automation and efficiency, which will actually encourage the velocity of flow through the ports. But that's the quasi-filtered answer. That's the answer without putting any labels in it. Oh, I have the pen walking out.
I'm just going to call on you and just stand up if you would and just say your name and where you're from and ask your question, please.
Great, thank you so much. Alfonso Bohe, I'm the Dean of the School of Business. I can call it the Business Center of St. University. Thank you for incredible insight. My question is, at the height of the pandemic, we saw Walmart investing in their own shipping container services and things like that. How did that impact you? And do you think that's something that is sustainable going forward?
Yep, got it. So the question was, is during the height of the pandemic, some of the retailers said that we're gonna charter our own ship and we're gonna do it that way, and is that sustainable, and what was the impact for me? That's kind of like a no see 'em in the fall.
You gotta say what that is.
Yes.
It's like one of the little sand mats that kind of flies in your hair and it kind of itches a little bit, but you can't ever find it, you can't ever see what it is. So, I know it flies in your hair, enough of the jokes. I don't see them very often anymore. So, anyway, the answer to the question is that many companies did it, but the challenges are robust. Because the second you start to operate your own ship, now you start to pay in eventually. One ship you might be able to get away with it. 2 ships, you're now having to start to pay into some of the labor retirement funds, and you have to start to pay for part of that. And as such, that's really a problem for us. So this is what we see happening: is that everybody that did it stopped doing it. The exception for that is the large e-commerce micro retailers. Your Wayfairs, your Amazons, your Jets, your Walmarts, that are allowing people to sell on their website. Where I talked to a nice high school student earlier. Yes, and he's bringing his own import stuff. And that's really cool. But that's the whole concept now. They're starting to sell smaller than packaged, so that the guy who wants to sell at Walmart can go and buy 6 boxes of something from China, and then they can bring it in directly under their thing. So this is the only change. They will not be asset owners though. This is not a long-term viable option. It was always concerned, oh yeah, Amazon's gonna own the ships. It takes 8 ships and 2 times that number of containers. It's not their core competence. I don't see them ever doing that full time. They did it at substantial cost to ensure their goods were flowing. At one point in time, I talked to Dollar General. They had 28,000 containers sitting in southern China, and they couldn't get them out. So that's 28,000 loaded containers of ours, which they have to pay for storage, that are sitting there, and they can't get them to move because there's no vessel space. So this was the counterbalance to that. I would say if you ask some of the financial folks, they would say, oh, it worked really well for us. If you ask the logistics people, they would say, oh, it was a train wreck. Oh.
It is back.
Microphone's coming.
Just really loud.
What comes after bunker fuel and what is the status of it?
That's great, because I didn't hit on the sustainability option, huh? Because I'm too long-winded. But wind is an interesting topic. Because if you're thinking about sustainability, wind is certainly one looked at. I don't personally feel that we have the solution for what that looks like today. There's biofuel, there's ammonia, there is wind, there's nuclear, there's a ton of different energy. I don't think that the solution is out there yet. We as a company will be carbon neutral by 2045. I'll tell you some interesting things, something that you probably don't know. Today, we're taking all of our ships, it's hundreds of millions, and we're repainting our ships today with a low viscous paint because it reduces the drag, which means that we end up saving a ton of money on fuel and we have to burn less. So that's number one. The second thing is that we actually have drones now that are cleaning the barnacles off the ship to stop the coefficient of drag. So you never have to stop the ship, you just have the barnacles cleaning the ship as you're going. It's a pretty crazy thing. Personally, if you want my opinion, wow, I think that we don't have a great experience. We have less than 450 nuclear plants in the world. I believe that nuclear is the way to go. The lifespan is forever. I mean, it goes for forever. It's not able to be weaponized. It's not what you would think. It's not, everybody says nuclear and you think, oh my gosh, that's really bad. It's not like that. It's a much cleaner fuel. If you look, that's how we do a lot of the armed vessels today for the military. I would say that there's an upside for that, but we haven't figured out how to make it efficient enough yet. I think I did a study once. We would have to build I think it's a nuclear power plant every 4 days for the next 19 years to produce enough nuclear power in order to make it work. I don't think the solution is there yet. Right now, everybody's gone either into biofuel or into LNG. Thanks for the question.
Questions?
I'm John Gash.
how do you ever consult with businesses who are locating their manufacturing firms so that they choose locations that give them better access to the supply chain, give them more access to a global market? Do you participate with firms in those kinds of decisions?
It's a great question. So I think everybody heard that, so I don't need to repeat that. My answer to you is that I would tell you any day of the week you can call me and I can tell you where to go and where not to go. It's not a very long conversation. I don't think you need deep consulting. I would say that the bigger challenge for me is where you put your TCs. I would also say if you're thinking about manufacturing, you want to talk about green sustainability, that's where you really need to think about where your carbon footprint is and what is that going to look like.
Can you see advantages to being in Charlotte?
I think from a manufacturing facility, I would not choose downtown. From an access to ports, Charleston or Charlotte is okay because you can get to Savannah and you can get to Charleston. I would say at one point in time when furniture was super big in like Hickory and High Point, it was an equipment graveyard. We couldn't get our equipment back out, so we started charging a premium because the amount of containers here would cost me $300 a container to get it back to the port area. So I wouldn't allow people to terminate here. I think Charlotte does have good access. If you look at the interstates, if you look at I think it's 85 and what's the other one?
77.
77. I was about to say 75, that's wrong. So if you look at the access to the interstates, I think you can do it. I would say that if I look at all the population models, everybody has moved to the south. So the south is the fastest growing area. I think whether you're in Nashville, whether you're in Charlotte, whether you're in Atlanta, I think you're all good, and I think I would feel very safe with any of those options. Deep water options exist in both Charleston and Savannah. Savannah's the fourth largest port. Charleston's probably seventh. I think you're good in either one of those options.
The person in the back, just say your name.
Yeah, Doug Daniels from Hub Point Strategic Advisors. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the potential impacts of nearshoring and reshoring on container shipping and supply chain in general.
Yep, so candidly, I don't really see it. I don't see it very much at all. I think that even if you look at the Mexico cross-border finalized, the free trade zone, the finalization components of Mexico, I still don't think that they've taken off. Now you have a single rail entity, so maybe that starts to change, but I think that's a long, long way off. I don't see Latin America continuing to grow as a nearshoring option. If I look at my fastest growth markets, I think you're going to see some additional movement from China into Southeast Asia. But to be clear, I think that Vietnam's infrastructure is really struggling. It's going to blow up. 1% of China equals more than Vietnam can take. So China's going to remain the powerhouse. The only two other options that I see, one nearer term, one longer term, is India. India has the hunger, the desire, the manpower to do it. Their infrastructure is still not strong enough to try to build that. But I would say that India will be the next place. It's the fastest growing market for us as a company today. And then the super long term where I see all the industrial equipment going today is into Africa. Africa also is at the very infantile stages of growth. But I would say, again, you have a super huge population. You have an underdeveloped country or underdeveloped nation and nations and continent. I think that will continue to grow and to evolve. So I don't think nearshoring, such as like the NAFTA countries or even into Central America or Latin America, they're still going to remain for garments and clothing because you still see that today. The finishing of those goods still exists, but I don't see that expanding into many factors further. Yes, sir. Sorry, Steve.
That's right.
Yeah, we're following you.
Hi. So first off, thank you for the
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
Hi. I'm a student doing some research at UNC Charlotte, and first off, thank you for the awesome insights to all the company. It was really interesting, and you told us about the challenges of the past, especially facing COVID. So, what would you consider the most challenging, like the upcoming challenges in the future, especially looking at the decap of China and the West and East separating?
Yeah, so I don't really see the decoupling really so much between the East and West. I think that the East and West are codependent. I think that this is going to happen. If the West stops buying from the East, what are they going to do? Because the consumption societies are in the West, right? Europe and the US are the consumption societies, and the bulk of the manufacturing is happening in Asia. So I think that decoupling will not really occur. If you ask me what I think is my personal biggest challenge is my oversupply versus flat or soft demand. That's going to be the challenge for the next 2 or 3 years. The good news is that it hasn't really been a bad last couple of years. So maybe if I can put that in perspective. My biggest profit year ever in the history of the company was 2019. We made $450 million in profit. Last year we made $20 billion in profit. It's not quite been the same. This year I think will be about $3 billion. So if that puts it in perspective, and I think next year will probably be less than that. I mean, the oversupply is happening.
We have one last question. Yes, ma'am.
We're working on a logistics
Wait.
development deal in South Florida.
Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Nancy Neal, and we're working on a logistics development deal in South Florida, and I'm working closely with a county that's trying to attract robotics, and I've been working with robotics manufacturers and also developers. And I was curious where you mentioned that automation would help ports, since we're trying to attract business out of the Port of Miami, where you see the automation adding value. So I'm talking to robotics manufacturers who are talking about having robots at the ports that are actually unpacking containers at the ports. Others are talking about getting it out of the port, even 90 minutes away and unpacking it there. And so I was just curious, do you see automation adding more value, getting the containers off the ships, or what component?
Sure. We already have the technological tools to do it today. We have 100% fully automated manless ports in the world today. That technology exists and it's proven, and we know how that works. We just don't have it in the US.
Stuart, related to that, in foreign countries, are ports financed through federal governments, and in the U.S. it is not federal?
That's a great question. That is not correct. They're definitely. I'm sorry. The question was: are the ports owned and operated by federal governments in other parts of the world, and in the U.S. it's not, right?
Well, there's a financing differential, right? Overseas, you got good ports with automation. We don't have it here, which means we haven't invested. Why haven't we invested?
Yep, so I would actually say there's two components. So he said, so what about the investments? My opinion is that we haven't invested in the infrastructure that goes into that, but the challenge isn't with the ports and the terminals, the challenge is with the labor side. It's very tenuous right now. So let me just be clear, because a lot of people don't know, but I'm speaking cryptic, and that's certainly not helpful for anybody. Everybody's here spending their time, so I should really just be clear. So we have two real port longshoremen unions. We have the ILWU on the West Coast, which is the West Coast labor union, and we have the ILA on the East Coast and Gulf, actually. And so if you think about how that works, it's a collective bargaining agreement, so any sort of changes that you want to get at the port have to be passed through the union with the union acceptance in order to do that. The agreement's for only 5 years. If you look at the West Coast, if anybody pays attention or reads the Wall Street Journal, there was a slowdown on last Friday, which created a whole lot of concern. The actual contract expired in summer of last year, and there's no movement on this contract now. So this is really a problem, right? Because the administration has said, if this port shuts down, if LA and Long Beach or if the West Coast ports shut down, then we're right back into the middle of a supply chain problem. Because now the ports won't get worked, the ships are going to back up, anybody who's ordered a couch is going to have to wait another 12 weeks. So, in my opinion, this is really the problem. And so they're trying to work on that. This is why it's difficult, because there are two sides of every negotiation. There's the labor side and then there's the carrier side or the business side. And this is why I've tried to tap into that topic. But I think it's just better to just be super clear. There's the ILWU, there's the ILA that comes to the East Coast and the Gulf, and then there's the carrier, which is done on the Waterfront Coalition, which is our collective bargaining,
And then you just try to find the deal and finally get the deal. So the technology and the advancement of the technology is because of the labor side, not because we don't have the money or the investment. The money and the investment is willing, but you have to have the union also agree to the technology, and the concern is that that will eliminate jobs for them. Is that clear? Does anybody want to see me afterwards?
Stuart, thank you very much.